G'day guys, how's it going? So in this video, we're now going to move on to a new topic, and that is structs in Rust. But before I get to that, I just want to quickly mention that this is video number 50 of my tutorial series. And if you've gone all this way with me, thank you for watching. Hopefully is what is mostly 50 of those videos. But if you haven't seen them all, I still appreciate you anyway. But yes, we've gone a long way. We've learned a lot, and we're going to continue to do so into the future, as long as you guys continue to watch. Anyway, back to the topic at hand. So we're going to learn this new thing called a struct, and essentially a struct is similar to a tuple, which we've seen in the past, except it behaves a little bit differently. So on my screen, you can see an example of the usage of tuples where I've created what looks to be a player tuple with a username, a first name, a last name, what I've called an account balance. So, how much money a player makes, and then whether they're an active player or not, i.e., are they still playing or are they not still playing, right? Now, to get this information out of each player, I then had to destructure each player, like so, which we've seen before. And then I'm printing out each individual item down here, right? So the issue with using tuples is the more fields you want to capture, the harder it is to understand the ordering and the harder it is to understand what these things are, right? So wouldn't it be great if we could use something where we could name, say that this is the username and this is the first name and this is the last name? Well, that's where structs come in the picture, right? It's basically another way of grouping related data like this, but in a way where we can name each individual what we call a field, right? And then we can access this player one object accessing the field of each of these types, right? Or of these instances of these types. So, in order to create a struct, it's pretty simple, right? At the top of the file, I'm just going to type the word struct, and then I'm going to give the struct a name. So in this case, I'm going to call it a player struct, right? And then it just basically needs left and right parentheses. And then inside of these parentheses, this is where we're going to define these fields. So for the case of the tuple that I've got down here, we can clearly see this is a username. So I'm going to type username. And then I'm going to give that username a type. So in this case, it could be at string, but for the moment, I'm going to just use string. And I'll explain why a little bit later, why I can't use a string slice. But we're going to store it as a string. And I'm going to do the same for the others. So we've got a first name, which is also a string. We've got a last name, which is also a string. And then we've got what did I say, account balance. And I'm going to set that to an F64. 64, not 46. And then is active. Oops. Can't get my fingers right on the keyboard here. And that will be a Boolean, right? So this is how we can declare the same thing as what we have here, but now we've specified what each field represents, right? Now, how do we take this struct and how do we replace this tuple declaration here with basically creating the fields associated with this struct, right? Well, what we have to do here is I'm just going to comment out this line. And I'm going to then go let player one equals, and then I'm going to use the struct that's up there. So I need to go player. So I'm typing the name of the struct. And then straight after it, we just create an object literal like this, which you may remember from JavaScript or something like that. But basically the left curly brace and the right curly brace. Now inside of here, we have to set the value of each of these types. So I need to say what the username is going to be, which we're going to set it to string from, and then the literal will be this down here, like so. And then we're going to do the same for first name and last name. So we'll go first name and last name. And then I'll just grab this and this respectively. And then we're going to go count balance and have that set to, in this case, 0.0. And then finally is active is set to true, right? So by doing this, we're now going to have this issue of destructuring because now we're not working with a tuple. But technically, we no longer need to destructure this object type because we can access the fields inside of this object. And how we do that, or this struct, I should say. Sorry, I'm getting caught up with object-oriented programming. But basically, what we can do now is down here where we've got player1 username, which we were previously destructuring from the tuple, we can now go player1 dot username. And that's how we can access the field. So we go the instance dot and then field name. And if I save that, you can see the error goes away. So I'll just do the same with the rest here. So I'll just quickly replace them all and then rename the field. So this would be first name. This would be last name. This would be account balance. And this would be is active, right? And based on that, everything's gone away. So we'll quickly do the same for the second one, just to prove that this fully works. So I'll just copy and paste this bit here, rename it to player2, and then we'll just change the username. And I believe it's 10. And I'll give it duck2 like it is down there. And the player's going to be false, right? Now, once again, we can get rid of the destructuring. And we can pretty much copy what's above here. Paste it below. And we can do the same thing, right? So now we can change it to player2. And then just change this to player2. And save, and there we go, right? So now when I run this, which I didn't run it previously, but essentially all it does is just print out all the fields for each player, right? Cool. So that is a very simple example of how we can make our code a little easier to read by using this thing called a struct as opposed to a tuple, right? Which is a little harder to read. Now, structs have a lot more power than tuples do, but for this video, let's just leave it there, and I'll talk about some of those in the very next video. So I'll see you then.